Okay, let's go ahead and get started. That's loud. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here today. First of all, let's go ahead and do introductions. We'll start with whoever's in the room, and then we'll go to the phone if there's anybody on the phone. So I'm Kelly Cole, and I'm over the Broadband Outreach Center. I want to introduce Emily Cook. She's interning with us. She's doing her MPA at the U right now. So she will be helping, and you'll be seeing her around. And then, yeah, we'll just go around this way, and then we'll hit back. Can you turn on the microphones and can you pass the microphones as you're doing intros? Let's pass the microphone. Yeah, you hit push like when it's, no, on the other, it's the other end. It's hidden. Yeah, you have to kind of hold it down.
Probably help if I had my glasses on.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
No, what's going on today?
We got to get the right hot potato, right? Yeah.
So, sorry, I'll try to do that very quickly. David Tejan, second time here. I'm with Rocky Mountain West Telecom out of Nephi. We do fiber engineering. I've got a good buddy I wrangled into the meeting today, Lance Jackson. He's with Zayo, so he's a first-time visitor. So come up and say hello to him.
Lance Jackson, the manager of business development for Zayo in the Utah market, in downtown locally here. So first time in this meeting.
Lynn Beecher, Go Fiber. I think I've been here quite often.
Donna Jones-Morris, State Library, and I've been here a number of times as well.
Dave Ryan, Strata Networks.
Jack Walkenhurst, All West Communications. Bill Duncan, Utah Division of Public Utilities.
Douglas Meredith, John Sterolakis, Incorporated for URTA.
Kira Slauson with URTA.
Peter J. with UStar.
John Moore, Southwest Regional Sales Manager for Corning.
Saxon Nybar with Americom Technology.
Gordy Coles, Utah Communications Authority.
Dennis Sampson, Utah Education and Telehealth Network.
Lynn Yoakum, Utah Department of Transportation, Fiber Optics.
Tara Tui with AT&T.
Mike Hussey with DTS.
Thought we were getting rid of mice, but I guess we're speaking into them instead. My name is Bert Granberg. I'm the manager for the state of Utah's Map Technology Office, AGRC, up at the Capitol.
Chad Sumoff, Government Account Manager for T-Mobile.
I'm Lori Ford, Branch Chief for Lands and Realty, BLM Utah State Office.
Shauna Derbyshire, Realty Specialist, BLM, Utah State Office.
Hi, I'm Melinda Talbot, and I am with UETN, the E-rate program.
Jeff Egley, Utah Education Telehealth Network, Technical Services.
Diane Bradshaw with Direct Communications.
Brock Johansson with Emory Telecom.
Do we have anyone on the phone?
Yes, Sabrina Scott is here with UETN, State Coordinator, E-rate.
Anyone else on the phone? Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and start with the agenda. Derek Miller is going to be here in a few minutes, so we'll do a few other things before we get to his presentation. So Doug Meredith had asked me to do a quick update on the BDAC, which I'm happy to do, and I was going to do that at some point today. So as you know, I'm on the Broadband Deployment Advisory Committee for the FCC. I'm vice chairing the committee. There's a meeting tomorrow, so right after this meeting, I'm gonna run out of here to get on a plane to go to DC to do that. So the status and what you can kind of expect for tomorrow's meeting, so they've broken it into 5 subcommittees that are working on, like there's a reducing local barriers, there's model code for states, model code for cities, and so there's several committees that are working on different projects. And then I'm also assigned to the state model code committee, the subcommittee. And so tomorrow, all of the committees will be giving kind of an update on where they are. Just a little bit of insight into the committee that I'm on. One of the things that I think has probably been the biggest question with this process is if you do a model code, it's hard to do sort of a one-size-fits-all because you'll get something that doesn't fit anyone. And so the conversations that are being had, and I think that I can say this, I think they'll talk a little bit about this tomorrow. What they're looking at least in my committee, is doing sort of a modular kind of menu of options, if you will. So it'll be sort of what it's looking like right now is it'll probably be like a longer document with different things that states can kind of pull from. And it's not intended to be like a big long document that each state that they want you to pass like a bill to do everything that's in the code. But what they're trying to do is find kind of the best language from around the country, put it all in one place, and then as states are going through different options, they have sort of a menu to look at as ideas. So that's sort of how our committee is playing out. And then we had a conversation with the municipal committee because they were struggling with that same question. And so our committee has sort of recommended to them, it makes sense to sort of have different scenarios. If you're trying to do this, then here are some ideas how you can put it into code. So that's sort of what we're looking at. And you'll see probably a little bit of overlap over some of the committees, and it's obviously evolving, and that's kind of where we're at now. So I encourage you to watch the stream tomorrow morning. And so each of the committees are going to do a presentation, and then the BDAC will do a Q&A. I think they're doing about a 20-minute presentation with Q&A after that. And so that's kind of where we're at. We're pretty early in the process. And so yeah, that's what's going on right now with the BDAC. And then I think Chairman Pai won't be there tomorrow because I think he's probably busy with all the nominations and things right now. No, and that's considered out of the scope. So it's very focused on the scope of those 5 committees that they've set up. And I don't know if at some point they'll ask us input just because of the relationship, but it's very clear that they are keeping to a very specific scope. So, yeah. And if you have model code you want to send me, just send it. If there is something that you think you want me to submit, I'm happy to do that. So, but yeah, just so that you kind of know what the feeling is right now with it. And there will be things that will be applicable and other things that might not be applicable. So, any other questions? Okay. And then I asked UEN to just move up their update, and we'll kind of shift things just a little bit until Derek gets here. He was meeting with the Lieutenant Governor this morning, so he's just coming over as soon as he is ready. So, Dennis, I'm going to have you just use this microphone. Actually, I'll just have speakers come up here. Do you want to come here? Yeah.
So welcome, thank you, Kelly, for the opportunity to talk today about an important project that we've been working on with Strata Networks for quite some time. In June, Dr. Ray Timothy, and Ray couldn't be here today, he's on vacation, but Ray Timothy, myself, Melinda Brereton, and Lisa Kuhn from our team went to Washington, D.C. to meet with FCC staff from the Wireline Competition Bureau and also USAC staff in conjunction with our FCC counsel, Gina Spade, in hopes of trying to get a funding approval to move forward with Strata Networks on our Daggett County fiber project. You guys might recall that we contracted about almost a year ago, awarded the project. We filed for E-rate on the project. It's about $2.5 million of E-rate support. The entire project's about $7 million, and Strata Networks is contributing about $4 million of their own capital to make this project work. There's a lot of moving parts to this project, and UDOT's been a great partner. Lynn's here as well to talk if you guys have any questions, and Jeff Egley as well. But bottom line is we're still waiting for that funding approval. We responded to a series of questions with Strata over the time that we've been under review for the application. We are concerned, like Strata is, on the timeline because they have all their environmental permitting approval to go forward. Dave, I know you guys are anxious to start work. We are just as anxious to begin the project. One of the strategies, we're also working with Connected Nation, one of our partners, to see if we can get a meeting with Chairman Pai to come to Utah. I believe Ray's extended that invitation to Chairman Pai, so we're trying to get a meeting with him to introduce him to some of the E-rate issues. As you all know, we've been recognized as leaders in the E-rate program for a number of years. We shared some ideas with the FCC staff and USAC staff on system improvements and program improvements and some challenges, and certainly the delays we're seeing on some of these projects are costing time and money. And so we're anxiously engaged in trying to see if we can get that approval granted. We're hoping in the next wave or two that comes out we will get that, but there's no assurances at this point. I don't know, Sabrina, if you have any comments as well. I know you're on the line. Dave, you guys are right with us. They've done everything they could do. They've responded to a series of questions in terms of the amount of fiber count that's going in. We felt like some of the questions exceeded really what USAC should be asking based on our experience with the E-rate program. So those are some of the issues we're going to try to bring to Chairman Pai's attention. And it's a critical project for us and certainly Daggett County, the community. The Southern County Infrastructure Coalition has pledged a lot of support for this project, and so we're also working with them and Mike McKee, their executive director, to see if we can move it forward. Anybody else have any questions or comments at this point in time? We know that the construction season in Daggett County is narrow, and so we're hoping, Dave, that we'll get some kind of positive approval. We did meet with several congressional representatives' offices while we were back in D.C. as well. They've shown us a lot of support. So we think that we're moving in the right direction. We hope that that funding's approved. And then if we do get a meeting with Chairman Pai, we'd invite several of you to come participate in that meeting, and hopefully you could spend a day or two in Utah, maybe actually go into some of the areas that we are trying to build this critical infrastructure with our partners. And we're hoping that opportunity presents itself. One of the key decision points on this project with Strata, it really impacts what we're doing in San Juan County with Brock Johansson and his group from Emory Telecom, and we've been in conversations with both UDOT and Emory on the contract award we've made to them. We're going to build fiber down to Bluff and to Montezuma Creek, but we did not file for the E-rate portion of that project this year because of some of the concerns we had, and so it has a huge impact. You can see on the state what happens with the E-rate program and the approvals. So we're kind of anxiously engaged in talking with Brock and Lynn and our staff on that contract and seeing how we can get the funding in place and move forward on that important project as well. So both of those rural areas of our state are very underserved in terms of this infrastructure, and we're trying to move forward with all the partners. Okay. Any other questions? The San Juan project, total we awarded was about $5 billion, Doug, and I think the good news would be if E-rate program support's available, and we believe it is with the state match, 95% of the one-time cost can be paid for from E-rate, from the E-rate perspective. Now that's, of course, given if we can get timely approvals. So as you can see, we filed last year for the Daggett project in July. It's now been a full year since we've got anything happening with it. I can tell you from our staff standpoint, we are just beyond frustrated that we have not been able to be successful with this project. We believe it's a model project across the country for a public-private partnership to be able to do this with UDOT. So I can say our meetings in Washington went really well. I think they listened to us, but we're still not seeing the results that we hope to see. So we will be working on that, and we'll let you all know. And certainly, Kelly, as you go back to Washington tomorrow, we're hoping she can meet with Chairman Pai's staff and encourage him to make a trip to Utah to meet with us.
And if there's an opportunity for like letters of support, or, I mean, I think, yeah, definitely let's talk about ways that we can try and.
Kelly, this is Sabrina. Did you receive my email? I think I sent you a package.
Yeah, I did receive that, and I was just waiting on Ray to kind of decide when and how he wanted me to act. So I'm still talking to Ray about that.
Okay, and I'll just add that, what we're witnessing, even though we're dealing within the E-rate program specifically, and my comments are essentially limited to that, but generally, we're seeing a lot of dysfunction at USAC, and also we're seeing what amounts to interference by some individuals. We believe we have good evidence that there are individuals within the Wireline Competition Bureau that are interfering and have interpreted the rules incorrectly, and we don't know how to overcome that except to inform the chairman's office. We believe the chairman is oblivious to a lot of the dysfunction that we are experiencing. And for whatever reason, we're unable to communicate a lot of that information directly to the chairman's office. So we want to overcome those obstacles, make sure the chairman knows what's going on in his own outfit.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sabrina. We can just tell you in general the process. As you probably can appreciate, for Utah, our team has been really successful with the E-rate program over the years. It seemed like, Sabrina, this year we only had 10% of our entire applications, and I think for last year we applied, Melinda Ryan, it was around 23 million for the state of Utah, about approximately. Only 10% of our entire applications were approved by the end of February, April. So you can really see those delays, from the financial perspective, impact Utah in a big way. In the E-rate modernization order, they said consortiums would receive priority. We've seen the exact opposite.
Yeah, I would add that, and again, pardon my hyperbole here, but we have seen what effectively USAC has preempted our own state's law. UETN is created by statute. We have a mission spelled out, a mandate spelled out in statute, and USAC has now basically undermined our authority and has made it impossible for us to manage our own data, for example, our own applications. They have stepped in and elevated our members to a position of greater authority than UETN, at least as far as E-rate application is concerned. That's, I think, fundamentally the biggest obstacle to our timely progression through the system, and that's systemic. That is a systemic problem, it's not limited to just Utah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Sabrina, and I'll follow up and see tomorrow if I'm able to speak with anyone. And like I said, I've been kind of talking with Ray about the best strategy to move forward on it.
Yeah, we might just mention
Thank you.
too that in August we'll be issuing an RFP for San Juan County to complete, we call it stage 1 and stage 2. This would be stage 2 of the project to hopefully apply and finish for broadband, getting that out to Monument Valley and Navajo Mountain. These are probably areas you could never, feasibly think that you could build fiber in. And we've had a lot of good discussions with Emory, with NTUA, the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority, a lot of the partners. Jeff and Jim Stewart have attended numerous meetings down in the Four Corners areas with all the partners involved in that consortium. And we're optimistic that hopefully in the next couple of years that we'll be able to be successful with that project as well. So appreciate the time.
Thanks, John. Okay. If you wanted to come over here and present, did you have anything that we wanted to put on the screen?
I'm just gonna talk and answer
You're
questions.
great.
Is that okay?
Yeah, if you're a stander, you can hold it. You can hold the microphone and wander. Perfect. So let me just introduce Derek Miller, former Chief of Staff for Governor Herbert, and he's now the President and CEO of the World Trade Center. They're located on our floor, and he's never visited our group before, so I'm really excited to have him here for the first time. And just, Derek, this is an introduction. So we have a lot of businesses from around the state. We have people up from Emory County, from the Uinta Basin, from St. George, so they'll probably be very interested in some of the rural things that you're about to talk about. So we have a few CEOs of telecom companies throughout the state or their representatives, and then state partners that do broadband deployment as well. And so I'm excited to hear about the 25,000 Jobs Initiative, and you can talk about the World Trade Center too.
Well, let me do that. I'll start by giving an overview of the World Trade Center Utah. Some of you may be familiar with who we are and what we do, but some may not be. Before I give that introduction, let me just say that I'm grateful for the opportunity and appreciate Kelly's invitation to come and spend a few minutes with you. So Tara and I worked together when this was brand new, the broadband. You were the broadband office, so, and there was no board. So, yeah, look what has been wrought. So it's great. And I actually was a few minutes late arriving here because Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox and I were meeting with the news producer and some of the reporters at Fox 13. And we, interestingly enough, were talking about this very issue, talking generally about rural job growth, but talking specifically about how our rural communities are connected through broadband and what a benefit that is to our rural communities. And of course, Lieutenant Governor being from Sanpete County and specifically Fairview never gets tired of, especially when I'm in the room, of talking about how he gets faster internet speeds there than I do on the East Bench of Salt Lake City. So I'm sure some of you are probably working on that too. So if you are, come see me afterwards. I'm ready to sign up. Just now I'm really getting off track, but he also never gets tired of pointing out that he continues to live on the farm in Fairview that was settled by his great-great-great-great-grandfather. And the reason that that's of significance to me is because Lieutenant Governor's great-great-great-great-grandfather and my great-great-great-great-grandfather were brothers. And somehow we got kicked off the farm and ended up in Utah County, and we're still really bitter about it. So I told him we've still got our eye on the farm, and we'll be back soon, and we're glad that he's taking care of it for us. World Trade Center Utah. We are a nonprofit. We were organized 10 years ago. Some of you may remember when Governor John Huntsman took office. He ran in 2004 on a platform of economic development and revitalizing economic development in the state. And there were a couple significant things that he did when he took office to fulfill that campaign platform. And one was the creation of the Governor's Office of Economic Development, which I was privileged for a short period of time to run. And the second thing he did was to call for the business community to create a World Trade Center in Utah, which I'm privileged now to be able to run. And Jessica, who's our communications director, is going to pass out a sheet that explains to you what we do at the World Trade Center Utah. it really can be categorized in three areas. Our mission statement is to help Utah companies think, act, and succeed globally. And the three ways that we accomplish that are, first, through educating and motivating Utah businesses and Utah communities. We do that by getting out into the communities. Later today, I'll be in Tooele speaking to their Chamber of Commerce. Been all around the state and holding forums and seminars on international topics like Brexit, what it means for your business, how to make money, international taxation, global marketing, things like that. The second thing that we do is we will work with companies directly, business to business, primarily doing market research. On the back of that sheet that you have, it gives all of the business services, but really our bread and butter is doing market analysis with companies so that we can help them figure out, based on their product, based on the goods they produce or the services that they provide, where there is a market for what they have. We want to do more in making more in Utah and selling more abroad, because when you're exporting goods, what you're really doing is importing money. And so if you're in business and you like money, it helps you to grow, it helps you to be more successful, and ultimately helps you to hire more people in Utah. And so that's what we're about at the end of the day. And then the third thing that we do, and it's kind of a cool thing, and that is to help expand Utah's global network. And we do that primarily by both leading trade delegations from Utah. So this fall, for example, we'll be leading trade missions to Vietnam, to Singapore, to London, to Jordan, and to Israel. And we usually do about 3 trade missions a year. And in addition to that, we host trade delegations and foreign dignitaries and ambassadors. And you may be surprised to find out just how many we get in Utah. I mean, for a small state, we get a lot of foreign dignitaries. In the last year alone, over 31 foreign dignitaries. And these were people in places like the ambassador from China, the ambassador from Japan, the ambassador from Germany, the ambassador from Brazil, from Peru, from Colombia, from Mexico, from Canada, and on and on and on. And so if you're a business in Utah that does business in one of these countries, you can imagine the value there is in being able to come to this room and to sit in a networking event, typically as a luncheon or a breakfast, to be able to shake hands with, exchange business cards, and begin to form a personal relationship with these visiting dignitaries. And it's particularly important because one of the things that we don't often realize in the U.S. is how closely aligned government and the business sector is in everywhere else except the U.S. I mean, here we have a tension. I would say it's a healthy tension between the public and the private sector. But in the rest of the world, if you want to do business, it's very often done hand in hand with the government. And so having those government connections is important. So that just gives you an overview of what we do, and I think we'll have a few minutes here to answer any questions you have. But I wanted to talk specifically about 2 important things that we're working on, and the first one is the inland port. You may have heard about this in the press. This is not the first time that Utah has looked at the opportunity to have an inland port in our state. And this was looked at in the 70s. It was looked at again in the early 90s. And we're taking a new look at it now here in 2017 because things are quite different in 2017 in Utah than they were in 1990. And as much as things are different, the actual basis of this idea comes from something that we'll be celebrating on Monday, and that is from the very founding of our state, we have been known as the Crossroads of the West. That was true in pioneer times. It was true when they built the interstate system, and it's true today, as all of you know, with Utah being a crossroads of the West for high-speed fiber broadband. And for all of those reasons, Utah has been a great logistical hub. And what we want to do is see if we can take and build upon being a logistics hub and see if we could actually build a true inland port, which the best way to describe it, if you're not familiar with an inland port, is to say, think of everything that happens at a port. From the customs work, the legal work, the containerization work, very often the last line manufacturing that happens, all of that except for literally putting the container on the ship is what happens at an inland port. People, the most frequent question I get asked about the inland port is, where would it be? And I, as a co-chair of the Governor's Exploratory Committee, I say I'm geographically agnostic, but an inland port needs rail, it needs freeway, and it needs air. So take out a map of Utah and start drawing X's, and you'll narrow it down pretty quickly of where that would be. The importance of an inland port is that it would benefit our economy and put us on a different trajectory for about the next 50 years. There are no inland ports in the Intermountain region. Reno has looked at doing one and decided that because they only get part of that east-west commerce, that it wouldn't make sense for them. Other areas have looked at it. Utah is singular in the Intermountain West for an inland port, because if you want to get goods from the east to west, particularly by rail, which the majority still travels by, there are only two choices, and that is El Paso, Texas, or Salt Lake City, Utah. And so we think we're in a great position to be able to build on this. And I would just add to it, speaking of Pioneer Day, you know, we're living at a unique time in Utah's history where I'm sure you all know, fastest growing economy in the U.S., which is the largest and most innovative economy in the world. We're just in sort of this era of nirvana. Doesn't mean that we're perfect. We still have a lot of work to do, especially other parts of our state, which I'll get to in just a minute. But we really are living in a significant time. And mostly because people living 50 years ago made really good decisions to put us in a position to be able to capitalize on those decisions today. So we have to ask ourselves, what decisions are we making now so that in 50 years from now, people will say, I'm glad there were good, smart, dedicated, visionary people, so that they will be benefiting in the same way that we are today.
Derek, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Could you address, like, with the inland port, what it means as far as job creation and money flowing into the state? Because I think that's an important factor.
Yeah, so it really goes to that, all of those things that I talked about as far as the core of the economic development would be jobs surround in those areas. But the real brass ring on this is that manufacturing that is attracted. So if you think about inland ports on the East Coast, Cordell, Georgia, Greer, South Carolina, there are reasons why BMW has their manufacturing plant there, why VW has their manufacturing plant there, why you see this other manufacturing. So that's the core of the economic development aspect. Jennifer, did you have a question? Yeah, so in order to make the dynamic work, you never want to have an empty container. So it's got to be imports equal to exports. And but it doesn't have to be just Utah imports that benefit Utah, right? I mean, again, it's to be a hub that then goes out. And that's why the Intermountain West is such an important region, because we are the area of the country that is growing population-wise. We're the area of the country that's growing economic and job-wise. We are the sort of the startup, to use that phrase, of the U.S. economy right now, our Intermountain region. Let me transition now to our 25,000 Jobs Tour, which is the second effort where we're actively engaged. When I left the governor's office to take this job 3 years ago, the governor said to me, Derek, knowing where I was going, knowing that I was taking this position with the World Trade Center, he said, Derek, we've got to do more to help our rural companies get involved in exporting. And so based on that counsel and charge, we've had a very robust and a very productive effort to get off the Wasatch Front and into rural communities to talk about the value of exporting and the resources that exist. Then fast forward to just a few months ago, where the governor in his State of the State address announced that he was setting this goal of 25,000 jobs in 25 counties, the 25 counties being off the Wasatch Front County. And after his speech, I was down in the governor's suite of offices, and I congratulated him on that goal and said, Governor, this is a great goal. It's an important goal. We've been very active in the World Trade Center in helping on rural job creation. And I said, now tell me, what's your plan? How are you going to do it? How are you going to accelerate private sector job growth in these areas? And he said, oh, Derek, that's going to be easy. He's going to take care of it. And the he was pointing to was Spencer Cox, who was standing right next to him. And so the Lieutenant Governor and I had the opportunity just a few days after that to sit down and talk about what we could do and what role the World Trade Center could play, and some of the things that we had learned being out in rural communities. And one of the things that we learned, really above all else, was the lack of awareness of resources that exist, primarily because those resources are located here, in Salt Lake City and along the Wasatch Front. And as much as you try to help other communities to be aware of those resources, there are just a lot of barriers to that. So in a nutshell, the 25,000 Jobs Tour is based on that idea of taking these service providers, there are about 25 to 30 of them, and get them off the Wasatch Front and into every one of these counties and invite business leaders, entrepreneurs, job creators, and community officials to come and essentially in a 2-hour period learn about every resource, almost every resource that exists in the state to help a business to grow, whether that's creating a business plan, finding funding, what grants are available, what incentive programs does the state have, and to get them out and to get us out into those communities to help make them aware. The corollary to that is that it has to be driven by local need and local leadership. So we've set up steering committees in all 25 counties and basically said, this is what we have to offer, now how can we be helpful? And we've already found that to be true from the standpoint of we've been now to Box Elder, Cache County, Morgan County, Summit County, and Rich County. So 5 out of the 25. And every single one of those 5 has been very different than the other. Different needs, different challenges, different goals, different visions for how they want to grow. And so we tailor this, this approach and then make sure that we're following up afterwards so that we can build upon the relationships that we're forming there on supporting what they want to do in these local communities that many of you are part of. So I think I took more than my time. I apologize for that.
You're great.
So,
you're great.
And if you've got a couple minutes, I'd be happy to address any questions that there might be. Mm-hmm.
Tara, do you want to take the microphone so that we can
Passing that around. So the Prime Minister was speaking about, Canada's economic relationship with the United States and why it's so important, and driving exports creates capital on both ends of the spectrum, right? And he went through a long list of states where Canadians have a lot of foreign direct investment, and I was very surprised he didn't name Utah. And so I, kind of like, did anybody hear him not mention Utah? Because it was very shocking. So I'm curious what your perspective is on, sort of our relationship with Canada and what we're doing to try to encourage foreign direct investment here. Thanks.
So Canada is our third largest trading partner. And we do a lot of business, a lot of Utah goods go to Canada. And in addition to doing very well on exports as a whole, Canada is definitely one of our largest destinations. What we haven't, just speaking very candidly, what we haven't done a great job of in Utah, and something that we need to do better on, is actually foreign direct investment. So foreign direct investment isn't necessarily imports. It's actually having Canadian companies who set up operations in Utah, or literally investment money that comes from a foreign country and invests in Utah companies. And it's just something that we just haven't really had a strategy around as a state. We haven't had a plan around it as a state. But hopefully that's changing. The World Trade Center Utah was just tasked, and we signed a contract with the state to be responsible for foreign direct investment. And based on that, just this past week, we've been starting by holding strategy meetings on what should the strategy be, and then how do we translate that into tactics. So hopefully, if we were to ask that question, or if you were to hear Prime Minister Trudeau speak in a year from now, Utah would be one of the states that he mentioned, but it is an area that we need to work on.
Any other questions?
No questions, Rob?
Just so well done. Lynn?
What are you learning about other trade partners that they have with the broadband? What is it we can do?
Yeah.
You know, Mexico, Canada, we got fiber. How do we get up there to work with?
So there's probably a couple areas that I would suggest, and one is looking at these third world countries that have large development projects where they're building out infrastructure, including internet infrastructure. So those opportunities exist typically through World Bank projects, and at the World Trade Center we have a contact and a conduit into the World Bank. So if anyone's interested in knowing what those projects might be, we'd be happy to help you. You can contact us looking on the contact information that's on this card. And the second area, it's a little bit on a different side of the coin, and that is the great advantage that we have in the state of Utah, especially in our rural communities, for them to get engaged in international business because of the broadband infrastructure that exists. You cannot overstate how important it is for these communities throughout our rural counties to have the kind of connections that they do, because the barriers to entry, particularly on the retail side of exporting, have never been lower through e-commerce platforms. But of course, you've got to be connected. And so one of the things that we always talk about when we go into these communities is that they need to be taking advantage of that connectivity. If they're not, it's the equivalent of, selling popcorn at your favorite local college team's football stadium and saying, but I'm only going to sell in row 5 of section 10. Well, why would you do that? You'd be a fool. 95% of the world's consumers live outside of the United States. 85% of economic growth is outside of the United States. And so if you're just limiting yourself to your little market and not taking advantage of the connectivity that exists, the e-commerce platforms that exist, then you're being a fool.
Derek, this is Sabrina on the phone. Sorry. Just a question for you. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Hello? Okay, sorry. In many parts of the country, the rural communities are actually losing population. Is that the case in Utah? And if so, do you see, is that part of your mission, I guess, to reverse that trend, if there is such a thing in Utah?
We are seeing that, and of course we see it around the country in rural communities, and we see that in Utah as well. What I would articulate as our mission is where there are people who want to be in those communities, where there are people who want to stay in those communities, this is going to sound like we can do this, and I don't want to make it sound this way because we're not magicians and we don't have a magic wand. But the governor's goal is that people who want to stay in those communities should have an opportunity in those communities. That's what we'd like to see happen. And the way that you accomplish that is, in my opinion, local economic growth. What I mean by that is, we read in the paper all the time about, Adobe's coming to Utah. Amazon is coming to Utah. And Goldman Sachs is coming to Utah, and it's great. I mean, this used to be my job. That's what I did. And we have a tendency to see it in the newspaper. It makes big news, and we cheer, hey, they like us. They really like us. But what we fail to recognize is that, on average, that makes up, corporate recruitment, corporate relocation makes up less than 2% of job growth. The other 98%, half of that comes from new companies starting in communities, and the other half from existing companies that are just plugging along, figuring out how to make it work in a competitive free market environment and adding jobs, often one at a time. And I'm making this point because I see that too often, that we think that the goal is recruiting the next Adobe, which, don't get me wrong, it's great. I worked on that project. I'm glad they're here. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Same with Goldman Sachs. But they're not moving to Scipio. Goldman Sachs is not going to open an office in Scipio. But there are good businesses in Scipio that can add jobs. So we just got to keep our eye on the prize and be realistic about it. Thanks for having me here. It's been great. Thanks for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, of course.
And you can follow up with them if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, please do.
On the
Please
topic.
connect with us. We'd love to work with you, love to find out what you guys are doing, and if there's a way that we can find out some opportunities for you through some of these development projects, be happy to do that as well.
Well, and I think too, since we have a lot of people in rural communities, any feedback that they have, I think is great for the initiative too. Because I'm sure that people have their ideas on things that can help in those areas. That's great. Thank you.
Again.
Okay, so let's head on to the next part of the agenda. So, Tara Tui has not had the opportunity to present in quite some time. And so we're happy to have her back. As many of you know, AT&T was awarded the national contract for FirstNet. And we're in the process as a state of evaluating the state plan, but she's going to give us kind of a FirstNet overview from AT&T's perspective and take any questions. And so we're excited to have her present. Yeah, I can. Yep. The PowerPoint is on there.
So I feel like we've talked about FirstNet quite a bit in this group. So how many people don't know about FirstNet? Okay. But you're new, so that's okay. So FirstNet was created by the Stimulus Act in 2012. It envisioned a nationwide public safety broadband network. And the point of the network is to provide interoperable communications for first responders. Today, it's one of the only outstanding recommendations from the 9/11 Commission that hasn't yet been implemented fully. So AT&T was I'll just do this. So we talked about that. More about why it's needed. Right now, a lot of states and localities have their own individual radio networks. Don't talk to each other. So when first responders are coming to an event, a disaster or something, they have a hard time talking to each other. So the vision of FirstNet is to break down that barrier, to provide devices to first responders that can work in any location at any time on the FirstNet network. So AT&T was selected recently as the winning vendor for the FirstNet contract nationally. It was announced end of March, March 30th, I think, ever since then, I've been so busy, and it's awesome. I love it. I was just saying, we had a meeting yesterday with FirstNet, and I was talking about how when I was in Kelly's job, that I participated in the FirstNet planning for the state, and I was able to sort of work on the SLIGP grant and talk about priorities for the state, especially regarding coverage and prioritizing coverage requests for FirstNet. And now being on this side of the table and being able to actually build out the network is just a really cool experience, and getting to plan it, you know, and work with our internal teams on executing FirstNet's vision is personally rewarding to me. So it's an exciting project. I think, you know, what I'm excited about with AT&T coming to the table for this is it seems like, you know, we've been talking about FirstNet for almost 5 years now, and it was always just kind of like out there. We'll get to it eventually. If we ever get to it, it's a big federal government program. But what's really cool is that I feel like since AT&T has been announced, we've just been going. I mean, you know, we'll talk a little bit about the timeline for governor's decisions to opt in or opt out of the network, but we've been ahead of schedule, and, you know, we're just moving at a very rapid pace to be able to build out the network. So why AT&T was chosen, you know, we bring a lot to the table. We have $180 billion worth of infrastructure throughout the United States, including services, expertise, and everything that comes along with the AT&T network. A really cool aspect, you know, of what we bring to the table too is the security that comes along with the AT&T network. I saw an interesting fact that I hadn't heard before. So we have more than 130 petabytes of data crossing our network every single day. So just to put that into reference, a petabyte of storage is enough to contain the DNA information of the entire population for the United States 3 times over. And that amount of information is crossing our network every single day in a secure way. And so it's a really cool thing to be able to bring to the table for our first responders. So we weren't alone in our bid and our award for the FirstNet contract. We have a team of vendors that are supporting the build out of the network. Additionally, you know, we will be relying a lot on local providers that already support the AT&T wireless network to continue to do so and to grow the network in a way that we traditionally have grown it. So, you know, AT&T, we've been doing this for 140 years. We already provide service to 99.9% of the United States population. So, you know, it's great that for FirstNet, we're not starting from scratch, right? Because I think when we used to talk about FirstNet early on, we were talking about building a network from the ground up. How do you do it? How do you do it quickly for first responders? How do you do it in a cost-effective way? It's difficult. So, you know, one of the reasons AT&T was chosen was because we're offering first responders access to our existing commercial network. So we cut down build-out time significantly. We will still be doing a build to build out band 14, which will be a new technology for first responders, but it won't really feel like a new technology. It just adds to the existing spectrum allocation that will be able to be available for the first responders. So AT&T brings to the table 120 megahertz of existing spectrum allocation that we use for our commercial network today, and the FirstNet offering was 20 megahertz of spectrum. So that will be, you know, in addition to the spectrum that we already have bringing to the table. In Utah, AT&T's invested almost $200 million in our network over the past 2 years. So we've made a ton of upgrades. We've been working, you know, expeditiously to not only continue our LTE deployment into rural areas, but also increase our capacity abilities in urban areas. And, you know, from my engineering team, what I hear the most is the capacity issues are driving the day. That, you know, we just cannot stay on top of the needs for, you know, the growing insatious demand for data, you know, that we see not only on the AT&T network, but just across the board. So, you know, we've done a lot to try to keep up and to try to stay ahead of the curve in Utah, like many other states. So, where are we right now? So, right now, we're in the process of talking to states, meeting with states, talking about what the states can expect from an AT&T FirstNet relationship and what their role is in working with AT&T and FirstNet in actually building out, deploying the network. And Gordy's going to talk more about what the state's doing, I think, next on the agenda. So the governors right now are in the middle of evaluating state plans. So, let's see, I wrote this down real quick. So state plans were released on June 19th to every state, and there's a proprietary portal where users were added by the state point of contact, by Gordy, to be able to view proprietary information. They had to agree to terms of use to use the portal, and there's a lot of very detailed, very specific information on there. But if you'd like to see the public version of that portal, you can go to firstnet.com. You can search for any state, locality, territory, or otherwise. You can zoom into Utah. The map looks a lot like AT&T's existing coverage today, because what we would like to do as soon as the state opts into the network is, you know, get first responders onto our existing commercial network as quickly as possible. So what that means for first responders is, you know, in any given day, time, they'll be using the AT&T network, the AT&T FirstNet network on a FirstNet device, I should be more specific. But in times of disaster, emergency, or other declared event, they will be able to have priority and preemption on the network. So immediately on our existing commercial network, before any build out of band class 14 happens, any, you know, additional infrastructure that might need to be built, first responders will have priority on AT&T's network, and we're hoping preemption by the end of 2017 is what I've heard publicly. So this is a big deal for first responders. It's something that they haven't had in the past, and it's exciting that it doesn't have to be built from the ground up. You know, we're hoping that by states opting in quickly, it gives AT&T time to immediately start building new sites, to do, you know, site acquisition, to get to work, quite frankly. So we've been asking states to consider the plans and to make opt-in decisions quickly. So right now we have 5 states that have opted in. Virginia was the first, then Wyoming, then Arkansas, Kentucky, and yesterday Iowa opted in. And the timeline you see, it's probably a little bit hard to see. So plans were delivered June 19th, and that starts the first 45-day window until August 3rd. And on August 3rd is when FirstNet expects to have feedback from the state points of contact and from the state on their plans. So any comments that you might have on the state plan, give those to Gordy well before that August 3rd date, because he, you know, the state is tracking, compiling comments, and the deadline for submitting any feedback from the state is August 3rd or sooner. And once they have submitted their feedback, it starts the next 45-day window for FirstNet and AT&T to evaluate the comments, provide feedback, to work with the state on moving forward on a state plan. And when that next stage is complete, it's either going to be September 17th or sooner, and that will start the final 90-day window for governors to either make a proactive opt-in decision, proactive opt-out decision, or to do nothing. The state does nothing. At the end of the 90-day window, it's seen as an automatic opt-in, and that date would be December 17th. So that's kind of the time frame of things. I think December is when we'll see most of this wrap up. But, you know, AT&T and FirstNet are hopeful that we see states move sooner so that we can get to work building and prioritizing sooner than that. kind of already covered this. So, I'm happy to take any questions you might have, or, just turn it over to Gordy. I see he's next on the agenda from the Utah
I'm gonna ask a
perspective.
mean question.
Oh, go ahead.
Are you anticipating?
It's not that mean, I'm sure.
Are you anticipating any opt-outs? And who are they?
On the advice of counsel, because AT&T is a public traded company, I can't really talk about what we know about states opting in or opting out. I can speak from a very high level that we have heard of states considering opt-out decisions. And to talk a little bit about an opt-out decision, there are states who might think that they could build a network, better than maybe a government agency, than FirstNet, or AT&T, that they want to do it locally, that they want to bring in the money that would come from utilizing that spectrum for commercial purposes and reinvest it in their state or their network. So those plans are floating around out there. I would put forward that opting out is dangerous for any state because you're putting your state's finances at risk with whoever your vendor is for potentially building that network. It's a 25-year commitment. There's no getting away from the 25-year commitment. It's, a serious financial risk, a lot on the line, and if a vendor goes under, the state's still on the hook. And so it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But there are states that are thinking that way. Yeah. Yeah, Lynn.
I've heard in the past that they rate the city ABC and we're kind of low in cost. Is that still happening?
Do you mean they rate states?
They rate cities
Cities.
as an A or a B or.
Are you talking about just their regular network? Like just in their regular?
Previous talkers on this stated that Salt Lake City is a C.
I'm not sure what you're speaking about. If you find more specific information, send it to me and I'll vet it for you, but I'm not aware of any such ranking.
I haven't. I'm not aware of that. Well, we're all under NDA right now, I believe, to review state plans, and so anybody that's on the committee isn't really at liberty to discuss what the, right? I mean, yeah, so we're all, yeah.
We're just in this
His
weird
update's
quiet
gonna be really
window.
good.
Thanks, Lynn. Any other questions? Well, I'll just give the shameless plug right here then. We've been talking about FirstNet for a long time here with this group. I would encourage you that if you want the state to opt in and you want the network built quickly, to, weigh in with Governor's office, with Gordy and others on the review committee to make sure that the state has backing that they need to be able to opt in. So thank you for allowing me to present.
Okay,
It's nice
thank
to
you.
be
Yeah,
back.
it's great to have you back. Okay, so now we're gonna have a presentation from Gordy on what he can talk about. And I think it looks like we're gonna get out early, which is actually really good because I have to catch a plane,
Yeah.
so.
Not much of a presentation, there's not a lot I can say at the moment. I did want to make a point of clarification, though. Tara mentioned, that the FirstNet network was born out of the 911 Commission, the last thing there for public safety communications, and she made it sound like that it was replacing LMR, and that's not the case. So I just wanted to clarify that, yeah. It's here to supplement the LMR networks, and it's going to be a data solution. So it's going to be here to help increase the ability for first responders to use new applications to stream their video and things like that, the next gen 911 types of things that are going to start happening. So just want to make that point of clarification. So yeah, she told you we got the state plan on June 19th, so we've been reviewing it for about 4 weeks now. We have a 28-member team that's been going through, and individuals have been assigned certain sections. There's 6 sections in the plan, so we've welcomed them to review any other section they want to, but we give them a specific section. And we've received a lot of comments, a lot of good comments on that. Yesterday, as Tara mentioned, we met with AT&T and FirstNet as the review team. Had a really good discussion with them. They're open to some of our suggestions. I can say that our conversations centered mostly around coverage and cost of the service, site hardening, public safety grade type things, new site builds and where they might be, and what we can do with regard to that and where we might place those. And also on rural coverage, what their plans are for the coverage in the rural areas, and also the partnerships with the rural providers out there. So I can't talk a whole lot of specifics, I'm sorry, but that's where we're at right now. We've given the group, our review team, the deadline of the 21st of July, to have all their comments into us, because we're going to have to take some time to go through and vet those comments to deconflict and delete the duplicates, combine things where we can, but it makes sense. And then we're going to, as quickly as we can, get those comments into FirstNet. We have till August 3rd, but we're going to try and do that as quick as we can to get that in and move the process along. So not a whole lot else I can say. I'll answer any questions that I can. If you have any. So appreciate you listening for a minute.
How involved do FirstNet and AT&T stick involved? How deeply are you understanding?
We have a view of that and how they're going to do it. And like I said, they've been willing to listen to some of our concerns out of the review. We've had some concerns about where coverage is going to be and where the new site builds are going to happen. And they've been willing to work a little bit with that. It can't be changed to where it changes the contract they've already entered into with FirstNet. So but there are some flexibilities there that we're working with. So.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to have an update from Lynn Yoko. She's just going to talk about the Sardine Canyon project that we've never talked about in this meeting, so it'll be new for everyone. Oh.
I'm going to talk about several projects.
Oh, good. Even better. Even better.
But, first one I'm going to talk about is, how many of you have been down to, is it Hogsback, Razorback, SR-12? Okay. We just brought fiber optics through that section with South Central. And we'd like to thank the BLM offices. Jonna, thank you. We reached out. Your Monument Valley office is top-notch. Thank you so much. We were able to bring the public-private entities together and to make that happen. So we worked with South Central on approximately about 8 miles of fiber optics. And we did a different type of installation that we've never done in the roads before, which all you fiber guys are probably well aware of it, down through that section. South Central came in with a big saw. We went down about 18 inches into the pavement and laid in they laid in micro duct, and they'll be coming back through with micro conduit. We had our Horrocks team do wonders with our bridges. If you've ever tried to do a bridge attachment with UDOT, BLM was like, we can give you a categorical exclusion because you're in pavement if you can get across the bridges. And I was like, my bridges might be harder to work with than you were. But Horrocks did a great job, and we made it across bridges with our attachments, and we are in the pavement. They come back through and they fill this with flow fill, which is a concrete. We then are doing a rotomill over the top, and that's why this was possible, because we're coming back over, and UDOT is rotomilling up and repaving that. The telephone companies have to come back through and do pavement on this. It puts the cost too big. It's too much. But by working with us on when we're coming through at the project, it worked, so that we were able to coordinate those two and get the cuts in and then get the other project coming on behind them. So if you go down there right now, there's orange barrels up. So be aware. We're paving through that section, and trying to keep our roads from falling off the hill.
There are particular photos on this, so.
Yes, yes, show those 3 pictures. Yes. Yes. No, in fact, I gotta talk with Shauna, we're trying to look at some traffic solutions for Calf Creek. If anybody's gone down to Calf Creek, people park everywhere, and then traffic gets bogged if you try to bring a trailer when everybody's parking and going off on these day-long hikes. Creates quite a bit of problem that's down through that section. So by getting these fiber optics in first, now we can take a look at what traffic solutions might be able to help. We're very vested right now at looking at traffic solutions. With First Digital, we just finished a build, I believe it was in right outside of Zion's Canyon. What's the name of that? Springdale. And with that, we're going to be putting up some signs, et cetera, trying to say, don't bring your trailer up and try to U-turn. It doesn't work. Here are some parking areas that you're going to need to park in. Please, trying to guide the public to areas that are going to work, because Zion has increased, Moab has increased, everything has increased. So we're looking very concentrated at what to do at all these parks, state parks, national parks, everything, to try to help transportation and to try to do some congestion. With Emory, we're just getting ready to put up cameras that will be on our live feed right outside of Arches in Moab, through that section and through a joint venture. And that's getting really exciting to do. Our other projects that we have worked on is we're just starting one with Sardine Canyon, and we've got 3 partners that are going in. We're working with CenturyLink on our build at Sardine Canyon. We're going to have cameras, we're going to have weather stations, we're going to have some traveler information, and maybe variable speed limit signs that go all up and down that canyon to try to help increase the safety of what's going on there. And by doing these type of partnerships, it really helps us get the best for the taxpayers' dollars. It helps with the companies that we're working with to extend their reach on where they can go within other sections. And so these public-private partnerships are really important. So tell Ty that we really need him to step up here for this section with it. But if he doesn't, I still think we're going to be good. Tell it, Strata, don't worry too much. I think we can do it. So this is really important to UDOT. So I wanted to share a few of those projects that we were doing and how excited. Sardine's been one that we've been trying for almost 5 years to get to happen up through that canyon area, and it's very exciting. So I think that was it. I left a project out that we're working on with you. I'm humbly apologize. Do you remember any more projects, Brian? Manila? Well, that's the one we've had a lot of discussion on that today. So that one's there, but that's the pie comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the funding comment section for that. So, all right, thanks. Oh, yeah.
My question is, with the micro-renting, does that change the network owner's responsibilities for relocation of facilities in the event of a road project? In the past, if you weren't 16 feet, you were not eligible for reimbursement.
It does. We do a modification to the agreement, just like what we've done with Emory on several. So then we add a mod to our agreement to say, hey, if I'm on that fiber with you, we're moving. They're going to watch it because I connect the shed, and the shed guys are the ones that are out there watching the project. And if they cut it and don't put it back, guess what? They don't connect. And so it really gives them motivation, I found out, to make sure we're in partnership. So yes, when we allow that exception, when we come through, we've done that exception on our route to Moab. We were only getting, did we get 18 inches even, Brock, in that rock that went through? We got it about as deep as we could, and we dumped cement over the top of it, concrete over the top, and said, it's not moving. But we're in joint agreement that when we permitted that, we knew that there were extenuating circumstances. Provo Canyon has some areas too, that. It's in your benefit if there's gonna be a resurfacing project, because all you have to do is come back with the flow fill, and then we come through and do all the pavement sections that are with it. It's not saying you can't. We would probably ask you not to come center of lane, we'd probably move you closer to the shoulder treatment. Yes, Brian? Mhm. Yeah. And you can look at that. If you look at our 5-year step planning on the U-Plan section, we put out every single project that's coming through. And if you look at pavement rehab projects, you can see if you're staying a step ahead of the projects, and then we can plan to come in. The regions that we're working with, at first when we started to partner with you guys, didn't care for it too much. Now they're kind of excited. They're seeing the benefits of the growth of the UDOT network and what we're able to provide and what we're able to do for the roads and the upkeep and just the visibility. We watch the deer crossing, and I think the guys just like to watch it because they want to see their buck coming through the crossing on the cameras, so that they know which one to go hunt. I tease them about that section. But yeah, there's a few cameras that are concentrated on these wildlife crossings and counting the animal movement through that, so that we can see how much traffic is there with the road section. So, any questions on trying to find the step or anything, if you want, just send me an email and. Oh, perfect. Okay. It depends on the depth that's required by that project. Sometimes it's up to 6. If it depends on how much rehab is happening to the project. So. That's up to the terrain, and what the design is. You usually drive it and you look to make sure you're not in a ditch or something else, and you're saying, there. That's going to be an access point. And then you try not to get too long, or you can't pull the fiber with it. So we're fairly flexible at coming off onto the side that where we need to come, but yeah. So if you see that you can take a look at our PIN number, our project proposed, what the project name is, and then you can take a look at. They don't have their project contacts in because we probably haven't signed the PM rights to it yet. But this one's coming like 2019. You can see the project values that are with it, and the type. $125,000 project, you're probably not going to want anything to do with. You want to look more for the high dollar, big pavement projects. So, with that, yes. Did America also? You guys are the contractor that did that. Oh, sure.
Oh, is there really? Can you send that to me, and we'll put it on our website?
Yeah, I can send that to you, and I don't know if you guys have one, but you can go to our website
And I think you guys have been awarded the Sardine Canyon, and you're just finishing up 70, aren't you, on that section going through there? Did you work out the GPS issues? Oh. I wrote a big letter for you. UDOT tried to do something interesting and tried to do an XYZ on the GPS of the utilities. And if you're coming in UDOT right away, this is kind of important. They're trying to get XYZ, but the guys in Region 4 thought you could attach a GPS unit to the bottom of the blade of the plow. You can't do that. It's got to be that your blade You could go up and then say, I'm up this high, and then go down on depth and say, look, the blade is sinking this far. Their argument was, well, what happens if you hit something that kind of bumps and we don't have a true reading? And I'm going, it doesn't matter. We put a locate wire in that's going to tell us our depth. Mm-hmm. So you went from 200 to about every 100 feet on that section. Yeah. Oh, that works. I'm glad they worked out a compromise because they weren't emailing me back. So, all right.
I'm gonna try and play the video. I don't know.
All right, try it.
See what we can do. I have that right one.
We like, it just depends on what we're doing, on what's being done. The middle of the lane was the best here because we were worried about environment on the boulder. We were worried about trying to make sure we were staying very center of the lane section there, and a lane closure that we were looking with when we were putting that in. So it just depends on the project, on where we're at with it.
Not working.
Oh.
Or if we plug it in, I can see if it works. I'll do it on yours. It's on the Americom. Yeah, it's on the Americom website.
Yes. Cool. Yeah, and that was to help for when they come through and do the grind, or else the road will kind of sink. And so they're a little concerned, and they're going to be watching it because they're going, okay, can we make it so it doesn't make the road degrade where we cut on the base?
And this is that exact same project she's showing pictures of? Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's sound or not, but.
Was it about, what, 7 miles or what?
I think it was about 35,000 feet, so right around 6.
Right around 6. So that, and then they just slide the conduit right in and then cap it, and then be coming back. So it is. So we're looking at innovations, and we appreciate it when the contractors and our partners bring us up innovation with it, and it's looking like we might do some more. We really like microfiber and the micro.
Well, the other thing that's
Can you look at your microphone, because you're saying lots of great things. Hopefully it'll work.
The other beneficial thing that we really enjoyed about doing micro trenching, this is a little bit different because we're going down the center lane, but it has very little impact, you know, as far as traffic. When you're open cutting a road, obviously you can't drive over it. But this trench, being 2.5 inches wide, it's got very minimal impact on the traffic. So.
No steel plates.
Right, exactly.
You can pull off traffic control and let the traffic go and come back the next day.
Yep.
And we like that as well. It was nice. It's in a high travel impact area. And we had to have them, we wanted them out of there before the June 1st. We had the pavement part was coming back in. So we really pushed it there to get through that section. And they did. And we're seeing, we're gonna find out. We're in a bit of the experiment. We don't think it will because it's coming back into that pavement, we're chewing it up. And so the base, where we put it down in, is back into the rock. And where we've stabilized it with the flow fill mixture for the asphalt, we don't think it will. We think it's, we're good, my engineers are going, we'll see. But we're thinking with the pavement we have, it'll be fine. We think it'll be okay. But if you look down there was nowhere else to go but the road. It drops off on both sides, through a whole bunch of that section. There was nowhere else to even think of getting these connectivity, but in the middle of the road. But, any other questions? Oh, sorry, Shauna?
Yes, yeah, there's it's like a pothole type of ordeal, right, that we use. There's an actual vac truck on the back, that's the hose right there, so yeah, it keeps the debris very minimal as we're cutting it, sucking it up, so. Yeah, it's very, very minimal, which is nice.
Very environmental friendly, so.
And as you guys can imagine, I don't have a product held Strata and Emery, would be very costly to try to trench that, through rock versus, this was quite a bit cheaper and, cost effective than you typically would see with a, say, directional drilling or trenching method, so. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we did the bridge attachment. Yeah, Horrocks is a miracle worker on bridge attachment. Yes.
Yes. It really depends on the size of the microfiber versus it's not a huge,
Fiber count will play a little bit of a role in that, but for the most part, it's we're talking dime figures per foot.
It washes in our projects when we've gone out to bid. It comes out pretty much as a wash. If we're going in with a 1D or an MD7,
right.
they come in almost exactly the same.
Of course, the benefit in microfiber on using the MD7 is you're putting 7 pathways in versus 4. So lots of future path type of ordeal. The other thing is sometimes, like on this project, you're able to blow microfiber faster sometimes than pulling regular fiber. So of course that comes down to labor, and that kind of cost. So that reduces the cost there. You might not see the reduced cost on the fiber itself, but usually production in placing the fiber is reduced versus normal.
It's fun to watch it blow. You don't think air does that? Yes, Jeff?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that on the inside, the project you mentioned there on the hot track and also Springdale, we and our stakeholders benefited from that, being able to work with the providers and Polk Elementary will benefit, Springdale Library, Port Washington Library should benefit, and so does Springdale Elementary, Port Washington School District benefit from that.
And your cell towers, when you're traveling down there. It'll be direct connectivity. So it's really good. I could have just got Zions to listen to me when they redid the dang tunnel. I tried to put fiber optic in, and it was, they couldn't see the vision of 5 years ago. So, but now they're going, can't you connect? So they have to come from 2 sides, so they come in from 2 different sides, but not through the canyon itself. Yes. Senator Hatchesville has been kind of a little bit stalling. It's been 2 committee reads. I think he's got some other ones that he's concentrating on, but I've got a little dismayed. It's like, come on, come back to the broadband one, with it. And so, we're still watching on that one. We've still got some more time, so cross fingers.
Okay, so on to our last item, so the maps for the month. Do you want to sit over here, or?
I'm gonna stand if that's okay. So again, I'm Bert Granberg with, State of Utah's Mapping Office, AGRC, and, for those of you who are new. Every month, we work with Kelly's office to do sort of, do a map that highlights something about broadband in the state. And I'm going to start just by covering a couple things that pertain to what's been talked about earlier today, and I'll try and keep this quick. My main purpose here, this is all out on the web, so if you write down a few keywords, you should be able to find everything I'm showing you. So it's just kind of enter it into the record, get you thinking about kind of what's out there and available.
And we can put it, we'll put it on our website under this meeting.
Okay, great. So the first item is following up with from Lynn's presentation. UDOT has a mapping website at uplan. I'm going to get this wrong. It's if you search for UPlan and UDOT, you'll find the website, and it's a clearinghouse of all the map information pertaining to transportation. And in particular, I wanted to point out that they have a map with their known future transportation projects. They call it the STIPs, or the STIP projects map, and I've got that up here, starting from, I know it as uplan.maps.arcgis.com, but it may also work uplan.udot.utah.gov. It might be both of them. I always just put in UDOT, uplan, and you start to. Yeah, right. If you click up on gallery, that's where you find fiber maps. That's right. Yeah. And then STIP stands for State Transportation Improvement. Thank you. So State Transportation Improvement Plan? Is it an improvement or an implementation? Improvement plan. So, you know, in this case, I just zoomed into the Daggett County area and noticed that there are a few projects here. Some of these are far enough in the future that I'm not sure that there's full details available for them, but, you know, you can see the budgeted amount, the description of where it is, and the start dates, and hopefully that gives you an idea of whether you need to inquire a little bit more and find out what's going on. So that's a good site, and as Lynn mentioned, they've got all of their existing fiber data published in the UPlan website, and probably are 30 or 50 or 100 different layers of other information as well. The other thing I wanted to mention is if you, again, I'm kind of going off of keywords instead of URL, but put in the logical keywords, FirstNet Utah Map of the Month, and the first hit is a map that we did in October of 2015, and it has the coverage goals that were submitted to FirstNet to inform the draft of the state plan. This is before there was a vendor selected, and basically it was an attempt to prioritize how you might phase in the public safety broadband network coverage in the state. And there were 5 phases, you know, I think one of the neat things about the selection of AT&T is that right away you get the full commercial coverage incorporated. So there won't be a 5-year build-out plan like this. And you know, even though the state plan process is under NDA, if you put together the maps that Tara showed, the maps that AT&T has on their website of their current commercial coverage with the Utah coverage objectives, you see that right away most of our coverage objectives are covered, and that there's a preemption, prioritization and preemption component that gets turned on pretty quickly. The other thing is, you know, like the FirstNet project doesn't make some of the traditional geographic coverage challenges for mobile go away. So, you know, there are some areas that aren't currently covered and are going to have to be talked about. And you know, I think leading the list is a little bit of I-70 in the San Rafael Swell, and you know, but other than that, like this idea of a 5-year phase-in basically goes away because of the level of coverage that AT&T has with their commercial network. So invite you to look at that more if you'd like to. And then I'm going to go into 2 maps of the month that we did recently, starting with what we did in June. There isn't actually a map with this, so it's a bit of a misnomer, but it's using all of the map data that has been submitted to providers to the center in AGRC. Going back to fall of 2011, we looked at residential coverage and how the speed level available to Utah residents has changed over time. and it's a stacked bar graph, and it's fairly simple to read once you get the hang of it, and you can see speeds represented in red for the gig speeds and pink for 100 megabits or greater have grown, and the slower speeds that are available to the residents over time have shrunk. And I think that this graphic, at least in my mind, being a very visual person, kind of tells the success of broadband deployment in Utah over the past 6 or 7 years. And on top of that, we've got a graph for each county. So and what we're looking at is really the percentage of addresses served at each of these different speed tiers. We collect data now at exact speeds, whereas the first 5 years we collected at tiers, but in order to keep it consistent, we kind of went back to that tiered concept. But we're taking all the address points in the state and figuring out what level of service is available to them in terms of the maximum advertised download speed. So this is kind of cool, and I think represents in 30 graphs, one statewide and 29 for each of the counties, kind of represents the work that everyone's been involved in over the past 6 or 7 years. And at the last meeting, I presented a map, a heat map showing where the locate.utah.gov economic development map for Utah is being utilized, and I think kind of ties into what Derek Miller was talking about trying to tell the story of what's important to potentially relocating or expanding businesses in Utah. And we were able to track statistics for where people had viewed the map, but also where they had requested specialized reports from the map for knowing exactly who the utility providers were, whether it's broadband or natural gas or electric, and what the educational and recreation amenities were available. So we took that same concept a week or two ago, and we took the residential map that is built on the data that providers voluntarily submit to the center. And we looked, this is just the last two months, it's a smaller time frame. We had to enable a little bit higher level of analytics on this site. For the other one? We had a year for the other one, and this is just 2 months, and a couple of the colors don't work perfectly on the screen, but this is where people are not just viewing the site, but where they're clicking on the map or typing in an address to get a report of the broadband services that are available at their address. So they can do that either by typing in the address or zooming in and saying, I live here, and it gives them a report of the 2 or 6 or 8 or 10 providers and the speeds that are available to them at their location. And we were glad to see that we're definitely getting some continuous use along the Wasatch Front, but it's also a resource that's being used in the rural areas. And we did a little write-up, and we also included Google Analytics on a day-to-day basis for the site. So that's kind of what I've got. Happy to take any questions, and all of this should be findable using keywords, Utah Map of the Month, broadband, and then whatever topic you want to hit. Should get you to I think we've done over 40 Map of the Month posts to date. So type in FirstNet if you want the FirstNet maps. Locate.utah.gov will get you the economic development maps, and the most recent one is featured on the front page. Thank you.
And quick plug, we actually also redid our website front page. Can you go to broadband.utah.gov? Not just one. So now you can kind of get the residential maps up front, the news, and then if you go down, the upper menus are still kind of the same, but if you scroll down to the map section, the news, and then broadband rises people, the broadband plan, newsletter, events. So changed a little bit, but you should be able to still find all of the same information on it.
Just one, if you're interested in seeing the Map of the Month series, you can go to Maps, Other Maps and Data, and everything's available there, including all the posts that were tagged with Map of the Month. do a full body of work. I mean, I think one of the driving principles behind this is we're going to collect this data. We ought to be doing something with it. So measuring performance, communicating the availability of broadband, and also using the map data to illustrate important aspects of current issues that are being considered in the broadband realm. Hopefully, we've done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, and it's nice that there's a pretty good library of them, because I use them for different things when I get requests from stakeholders, so it's been great to have those already pre-populated. Well, great. Did you have a question? We can run them. We don't have them recently, don't we?
Sorry, I didn't see where. We did do a map of the month for coverage stats for tribal areas. I want to say it was maybe 2.5 or 3 years ago. It probably needs to be updated. Maybe that's something that we should consider. If you've got an immediate need for something like that, talk to me and I'll see what we can run for you. But, you know, like that graph that I showed that shows the coverage percentages, just like we did it for counties, we could do it for each of the tribal land areas. And that's really the strength of having all of those statewide, the address points, GPS with XY locations, and then the boundaries of things like tribal lands, is that we can put those together for custom analyses. So let me know what you want, and we'll be happy to look into it.
And a lot of times, like, some of the random requests that we get turn into maps of the month, because they're already, and so sometimes, be careful what you ask for, because it might end up on the website. And let us know if it shouldn't, because it'll probably end up there. So if you have ideas, we always love to get map of the month ideas, and we're shocked that we are still thinking of something every month, that we haven't run out of just ideas. But we love to hear things that you guys think of. So I think that's it, unless anybody has any other announcements or feedback. And then our next meeting will be on September 21st here in our offices again. And as I'm going to apologize, I'm going to sneak out. Emily is here if you need anything. I'm going to have her hang out, introduce yourself to her. She's awesome. And if you need anything, she'll be able to take care of you. But thank you so much, everybody, especially everybody driving up from various parts of the state.